Hello, this is Dr. Eric Bricker, and thank you for watching A Healthcare Z. Today's topic is employed doctors earn more money. Now, as many of you know, there has been a huge trend for physicians to become employed by hospital systems. Now, about 10 years ago, about 25% of doctors were employed by hospital systems, and today it's about 51%. So in 10 years, it's like doubled. And on top of that, about 90% of new doctors coming out of their residency are taking jobs as employed physicians. So it's not going to stop at 51%. It's just going to keep increasing. Now, this came to mind when I read a recent survey from the American College of Cardiology that did a survey of 2,894 cardiologists. And it found in the survey results that employed cardiologists by hospital systems earned on average $645,388 per year. In contrast, the independent cardiologists that they surveyed earned $588,272. So the employed hospital cardiologists made more than the independent cardiologists. On top of that, the salary of employed cardiologists went up by 4% last year, and the income of independent cardiologists went down by 2.7% from last year. So right now there's a $57,000 difference per year between being an employed cardiologist and an independent cardiologist, and that gap is widening because the trend is for employed cardiologists to keep making more and for independent cardiologists to keep making less. So it kind of makes sense, especially for cardiologists, why more doctors are becoming employed by hospital systems at a very basic level because they can make more money. Okay, now why? Why can cardiologists and other specialties make more money if they're employed? Well, this relates to another A Healthcare Z video that I made. I will leave a link to it in the show notes that showed how much doctors bring into hospitals in terms of their facility revenue by specialties. And wouldn't you know it, cardiologists bring in about $2.45 million worth of facility fees per year to the hospital in the form of things like stress tests and outpatient echocardiograms that they're not doing in their office but that they're doing at the hospital, for cardiac catheterizations, for the implantation of pacemakers, for cardiac ablations, for arrhythmias like atrial fibrillation. So you add all that up, and each cardiologist brings in about $2.5 million a year to the hospital. Okay, so let's now take a stress test as a specific example. So if you're an employed physician, then you're going to actually use the cardiologist. You're going to bill to actually interpret the stress test, and that's going to be what's called the professional fee. And let's just say, and yes, Medicare is going to pay less, and Medicaid's going to pay less, and commercial insurance is going to pay more. You've got this payer mix, blah, blah, blah. But let's just say it's about $120 to interpret a stress test. But the hospital is going to be reimbursed about $2,200 for the facility component of the stress test. So if you're an employed physician, the hospital's getting the $120 and the $2,200, and so when they're paying you your almost $650,000 salary, they're giving you some of the facility fee as part of your total compensation. Whereas if you're an independent cardiologist that has no relationship with the hospital, then all you're able to collect is the $120 professional fee, and you don't get any of the facility fee. Now, there is a hybrid in between, where many hospital systems and many cardiologists have then formed joint ventures, because the cardiologists are like, look at this, you're making $2,200 per stress test, I'm only making $120, I want some of that. And the hospitals are like, well, we better make the cardiologist happy so we can keep having the volume of their stress tests come to us. So they form these joint ventures where the cardiologist is still getting the $120 professional fee for reading the stress test, and then they're typically just barely the minority owner of one of these joint ventures, where they're like the physicians are like 49% owner of the joint venture, and then the hospital's like 51% owner of the joint venture, so that the cardiologists get then 49% of the profits from all the facility fees that are left over at the end of the year. Now, here lies the problem. The Texas Heart Hospital, which, oh, by the way, is connected to the Baylor Scott and White Plano Hospital, which, oh, by the way, that's where I worked as a hospitalist back in 2007. They had this exact same arrangement as this joint venture, and they got in trouble because it's a violation of the Stark Law. And the Stark Law is basically it's actually a federal law that said, because it relates to Medicare, that says that hospitals cannot pay doctors for referrals. And essentially, this sort of sharing of the facility fee in that joint venture, they said constituted paying the doctors for the referrals. And as a result, and oh, by the way, this came about because of a whistleblower. Two doctors blew the whistle on the Texas Heart Hospital. And as a result, the Department of Justice investigated, and Baylor Scott and White and the Heart Hospital came to a settlement where the Heart Hospital had to pay $48 million. Now, this brings up another A Healthcare Z video that says that, look, this whole sort of like joint venture thing for ambulatory surgery centers is like totally illegal, where the facility shares the money, essentially paying for referrals to the proceduralist for operating at the ambulatory surgery center, because ambulatory surgery centers have a safe harbor from the Stark Law. So, it's a very fine line that the doctors and the hospitals walk when they enter into these relationships. But, and here's the big but, if you're an employed physician, you don't have to worry about the Stark Law because you're an employee of the hospital. So if anything, the fact that the Department of Justice went after this joint venture, if anything, is going to make cardiologists and potentially other specialists even more interested in just being employed, because then they're not going to have the Department of Justice come after them, and they're able to make more money, almost $650,000, because they're able to get a piece of the facility fee as part of their salary. So physician employment essentially circumvents the Stark Law. Okay, and so that is a super important dynamic to understand in terms of the financial incentives for physicians and the financial incentives for hospitals. When you vertically integrate the two, you essentially break down the financial conflict of interest that the Stark Law tried to prevent. And so therefore, you get higher pay for the cardiologists, and you get a higher volume of procedures through that particular hospital. Now, I don't foresee this trend stopping anytime soon. I'm not passing judgment. I'm not saying that they are like wrong for doing this. I mean, shoot, they're like, I want to get paid more. Everybody wants to get paid more. There's not a person in America who doesn't want to get paid more. So I'm just saying that this is what's happening, and I wanted to bring it to your attention. And thank you for watching A Healthcare Z.